So, Suella Ibila Cruella Fernandez, who has adopted a European name Braverman, as part of our whitening program, has got in the picture today on the page 19 of the I newspaper a pair of tights that make her legs look white, almost white. Now, if you compare her pictures only about a year ago, you will find that she looks more like her pigmentation, skin color. But in the last year, she has not only drastically upped the ante against all the logical, reasonable, lawful issues and topics and values. She has also got rid of her pigmentation, her skin color, as well as putting on a smile, even when she is putting out, issuing the most on, say, for example, the 1951 Refugee Convention. Now, today's I newspaper promotion is by the right wing Anne McEvil. Anne McEvil is a right wing woman promoting the likes of Johnson and all the other right wing issues. She has been doing this for the last 20 years with increasing distortion of the evidence and getting herself a spot as a commentator for the right. So we call her Anne McEvil, not McAvoy, but McEvil, because that is what she is doing. And the promotion piece for Cruella Eviler Suella Fernandez on page 1 of the I newspaper today is headed Suella Braverman's application to become next story leader. Now, what is that supposed to mean? What is the actual significance, substance of the phrase Tory leader? What is it? What does it mean? We shall be examining that and other related issues and questions and concepts. Now, the I newspaper, as I said, it's the main promotion with a picture at the top of the I newspaper today is under politics, Suella Braverman's application to become next story leader. That's Anne McEvil. The Murdoch scum doesn't run with Suella evilness, but the Times does. Times gives the main space on page 1. Immigration is threat to the West, says Braverman. Now, who last said anything like that? What she means by immigration is people, Asian people. Even more precisely in her case, Indian people, Pakistani people, Bangladeshi people, Sri Lankan people, and then the other parts of Southeast Asia, and African, of course. She doesn't mean people from the European continent, the European white ones. So the immigration is not a generic word, it's a specific word disguising her racist servitude to the racists. And according to the interpretation of her stance, lying stance, as depicted by the I newspaper in today's edition of the I newspaper, page 19, this is a this is not the first time, but this is how Anne McEvil is saying her application for becoming next conservative leader. Well, we shall examine, as I said, what does Tory leader or Conservative Party leader actually entail. And on page 4 of the Times, immigration rate requires 213,000 more school places. Now, when she calls immigration at the end of the West, in the front page of the Times, same Times, immigration is threat to the West. This is not what she is meaning, because the Times is admitting whatever the actual number in the final detail, 213,000 more school places means that there is no likelihood, ceteris paribus, that is to say, everything remaining the same, that the United Kingdom is going to stop allowing immigration into the United Kingdom. And that is nothing to do with migration, nothing to do with the threat to the West. That is to stop the United Kingdom sinking. Because whatever the limitations, whatever the actual problems that are associated with newly arrived individuals from other parts of the world, especially Asia and Africa, because they have not the necessary requisite empirical skills to deliver the services. Despite all that, they are they are employed in service sector. The service sector, taking all the services involved, is a desert in terms of indigenous white individuals. They don't want to work. They really don't want to work, and none of these commentators and criminals like Anne McEvil wants to admit that. Immigration is a function, to use a mathematical expression. Immigration into the UK and to Germany, to France, immigration is a function of the deficit in the availability of, let's say, indigenous people to do the ordinary decent work. Most ordinary indigenous people are into disproportionately into crimes and criminality. So in this picture, Suella evilness is pictured in the USA with the British current British ambassador to the USA, Karen Pierce. Now, when was she pictured there? It doesn't say, but it must be one in the last. And I'm going to check what the main thrust of this piece by Matt Dayton. What is the spelling? Matt Dayton, Home Affairs editor in the Times. He says an extra 213,000 secondary school places. So it doesn't even include the primary school places. due to immigration and high birth rates among foreign born mothers, Suella Braverman has claimed. Now, the Times is irresponsibly prioritizing the wrongful and ignorant attack that she has made on the 1951 Refugee Convention. Now, the Refugee Convention is any restrictions to. Let's check the glory years of 1951. It's not a singular, it's a plural. The name, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. That's the website where we are finding it. It's spelled as the 1951 Refugee Convention. But is it a plural or is it singular? I have to check the visual. The 1951 Convention, which is how I note it, provides the internationally recognized definition of a refugee and outlines the legal protection rights and assistance. So let's protocol help protect them. So one was the, or one is the Refugee Day, 2000. So it was on the 20. It says hope away from home. It's like the fucking jackass Jackson in the USA using hope, hope, hope when the people are being massacred and violated and are still being violated and massacred. I hate the word hope when it is not appropriate at all on the evidence of what is going on. It's a childish gallery of photographs of Refugee Week. That is where the United Nations has been let down. So it says about the United Nations HCR leads international action to protect people forced to flee conflict and persecution and those denied a nationality, safeguarding the rights and well being of people forced to flee for over 70 years. Well, that's a lie. It looks impressive, but it's not true, not based on the facts. Now, about the other issue, we'll come back to the refugee mentioned later. Going back to the HS2, high speed 2. High speed 2 has got a coverage that HS2 gets woke as it goes for broke. Now, to those who are new to this sound of the word woke, WOKE, this is a racist confection. this is a racist confection because this word woke is a collective statement, if you like, reference to people who oppose racism, people who oppose discrimination, and it is intended to discourage critics of racism. And the Murdoch Times cannot resist the slimmest opportunity to have a go at woke when it shouldn't be doing that. It should be focusing on how is it that 180 billion pounds has been already wasted in the name of HS2. We'll go to the version in the Daily Mail, but let's check the copy on page 2 of the Murdoch scum. HS2 rail bosses spent money on a woke inclusivity document as experts warn the line's real cost could double to 180 billion. Now, just keep the proportionality in mind when looking at the woke expense. Training sessions on unconscious bias were set up for workers despite finances being out of control. Look at that 180 billion. So let's come to the finance if they mention the finance about the training courses. The coaching lessons were revealed in HS2's latest Equality, Diversity and Inclusion document. Tory MP Greg Smith on the Transport Select Committee last night said HS2 chiefs were taking the public for mugs. That is stupid, typical conservative idiocy and the Murdoch scum stupidity. He said, not content with running massively over budget, they are now using our cash to bake a huge slice of woke pie. Now, where is the amount for this document? It doesn't actually say how much they have spent on the woke, but whatever it would be absolutely small. Absolutely small. I'm not supporting the internal bureaucratic maneuvers in the HS2 bureaucracy, which is totally corrupt and which I completely condemn and have condemned and will continue to condemn. So, what are they saying on the so called editorial? Remember, this scam is so stupid that every word has to be qualified and put in correct context because they're subliterate, they're illiterate, they're racist, they're biased, they're ignorant, they're ill informed, these shits. So the heading to this opinion piece today chancellors or rail nerds still demanding it to be completed in full, spare a jot about its mind boggling cost or which other budgets might have to be slashed to fund it. What must be total reach must the total reach before they have qualms? 200 billion? 300 billion? This railway for the AI era was misconceived from the off. It's a global embarrassment, a byword for failure, topped and tailed, and almost entirely pointless. The profligate waste of public money, now entirely out of control, must never be repeated. The monstrous absurdity of appeasing NIMBYs by boring for miles under Buckinghamshire at nearly 6 times the cost of high speed rail in France. Scores of executives on 150,000 plus salaries. A boss on 640,000 pound salary. Our taxes blown on a 52-page annual report into equality, diversity, inclusion among its legions of staff, down to exact percentages who are LGBT, all apparently vital to build a railway. HS2 was only ever remotely arguable if built as planned and on budget. The public has turned against it, but it will not be enough for Rishi Sunak to axe the section beyond Birmingham. He must spend some of the billions saved to upgrade Northern Rail and produce far more obvious and rapid benefits. And he needs that detailed strategy in place to sell to the North before he explains why HS2 as designed is dead. Now, this campaign, Khudilar campaign, our profile, Twitter profile, has had our opposition to HS2 since long before any campaigning momentum built in the countryside around the line or proposed line, HS2 line. And we have argued that the campaigners who have been backed by several local councils on the way have lacked the certitude, the clarity, the ethics and transparency that the Khudilar campaign showed when we successfully campaigned over 8 years to stop the Crossrail whole plot against the Brick Lane, London E1 area. Because we didn't raise any money, we didn't campaign for raising any money, and we did not have the backing of any local council whatsoever. Indeed, the local council that was involved in the framework was the local Tower Hamlets Council, which we exposed, targeted, and condemned to a point where it was left with no option but to campaign, not along with us, but to do the same thing that we wanted them to do, but with different arguments. Because what they were doing, they were saying, like Abbasuddin Elias Helal, who was at a given time leader of the Tower Hamlets Council, Labour Group and Tower Hamlets Council itself. He said to me, when I gave him the opportunity to stop the council supporting the Crossrail whole plot, he said that it was a party matter. Now, at the time, I was an active Labour Party member in the sense that I was active as a party member. I was not an active careerist, but I was active Labour Party member. And I said to Abbasuddin Elias Halal that if he agreed, if Abbasuddin alias Halal agreed to stop the council, Tower Hamlets Council, playing pliant role for the Crossrail Hole plot, if he agreed to stop doing that, then we, the campaign, the Khudilar campaign against the Crossrail Hole, would stop targeting him and the cabal that he was leading. What that would mean would be to allow Abbasuddin alias Halal to carry on campaigning to fulfill his ambition to become member of parliament from the Bethnal Guinea-Boa constituency or from the next constituency, which is Limehouse and Poplar. But Abbasuddin alias Halal behaved ignorantly and insincerely and very foolishly in saying that it wasn't his decision, it was the party decision. Now, that was a lie. So, Abbasuddin alias lied to me and lied to the community. So, what we did was to heighten the pressure. We organized everything, and I organized everything that I could in my whole entire campaigning career of several decades. I left nothing to chances. So, such an atmosphere was created in Tower Hamlets during the 8 years of the real campaign against Crossrail Hole that all the local councillors on Tower Hamlets Council that had become the targets of our campaign, who had been elected with significant votes of the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets, were put on a state of nervousness for a very long time. That's the bottom of it. We didn't put any money in there. We didn't have any money to put in there on anything. Everything that money could buy was more than available by me. My expertise are is wide ranging and goes over several decades. I am a decades ranging campaigner against power, for democracy, for transparency. So I gave the notice to Abbasuddin Ali Salal that he would regret saying to me what he was saying. I don't think he has stopped regretting that. He could have come back to me, but he was not able to get the electoral advantage. He's not even a councillor. He could not even get to be a sustained councillor in Tower Hamlets. So that is the amount of political cost that was extracted from the likes of Abbasuddin alias Halal, who has got a long, long history of being a career councillor at the expense of the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets. Now, we tell the people who campaign for HS2 that the only way to stop HS2, this is nothing to do with the current kind of concern in the Sun on the Daily Mail or in Rishi Sunak's statement or the Chancellor Hunt's, Jeremy Hunt's private briefings. This is to do with the people who are not part of the government, who are not part of the parliament, but who are genuinely concerned about the continuation of HS2. We said to them that the clearest, neatest way to stop HS2 was to stop the careers of local members of parliament. When I say local members of parliament, who do I mean? I mean those members of parliament from constituencies that are around the alignment, proposed alignment of HS2, those who are supporting HS2. If those MPs were targeted for replacement and defeat, then what would happen before any election, any next election? Their minds would be fully concentrated to definitively opposing HS2. That's what would happen. And that would mean that HS2 would be dropped by the government. There is no such thing as scientific, let's say, value for a corruptly conceived project that is not sustainable, was never necessary, and would never be needed, because all the things that have been happening in the last, let's say, 20 years in the railway sector, let's say in the United Kingdom, the usage of railway has been undergoing serious reduction. First of all, because the existing lines and networks around the country, not just the alignment from London to Manchester or wherever, the entire existing network that has been built over the last 200 years is seriously in need of repair. And that includes the entire country. It's worth hundreds of billions, if not thousands of billions of money and resource. And we said in the context of the opposition to the argument about Crossrail, that Crossrail would transform London's economy, we said that was a lie. Now, Crossrail has been running now as Elizabeth Line for the last, let's say, 2 years. And it's a complete lie that it has transformed. It has not transformed the economy. What Elizabeth Line has done is to enable people to travel by saving a few minutes in their journeys. That's all. There are other railway lines, alignments, networks that have got slightly slower kind of trains. Elizabeth line is faster. And because it's new, it is cleaner than the many of the existing coaches. Otherwise, the railway transport is not undergoing an upward revolution, for the simple reason the British economy is traveling on a downward slope. And the travel journeys again So if that closing railway station ticket offices, what does it prove? It doesn't need it doesn't need a kind of comprehensive research. The reason why they are having to close ticket offices is because there is no demand. Despite the despite the things that the trade unions are saying, they are saying the typical, predictable trade union things. They are falsely saying that closing offices will affect the public. That's nothing to do with it. It will not affect the public in the way that the trade unions leadership are lyingly saying it will. It is absolutely the case that railway transport is in decline. Let's check the latest statistics on that one. All right. Look at these statistics. A total of 369 million rail passenger journeys were made in Great Britain in autumn 2022, starting 1st of October to 31st of December 2022. This was 20% lower than the 461 million journeys in the same quarter 3 years previously. There is this rail passenger. So on the government.uk website, it says it's a national statistics. Rail passenger numbers and crowding on weekdays in major cities in England and Wales, 2022. And it says this information applies to England and Wales. About this release, this publication provides information on the number of passengers travelling by rail into and out of a number of major city centres in England and Wales. The statistics are based on a count of passengers carried in England and Wales between the 19th of September to the 11th of December 2022. The statistics represent passengers on national rail services on a typical weekday. Where possible, the count period excludes days when there was disruption, such as a day of rail strikes. Data is collected from franchise train operators at selected major cities across England and Wales. It does not include open access operators such as Heathrow Express and Grand Central. The publication focuses on passenger numbers during the morning and evening peak hours, when rail travel tends to be busiest. The AM peak covers trains arriving into city centers between 700 hours to 959 hours, whereas the PM peak reflects train departures departing between 700 hours and 1859 hours. A city center is defined using a cordon to include the major city center stations. In some cases, passengers will not alight at the cordon station but are counted there Crowding statistics, passengers are counted at the busiest station on the route when entering or leaving the city center. The statistical release reintroduces two sections: passenger standard, passenger crowding, PICS metric. The previous 2 years saw almost zero crowding due to the COVID 19 pandemic. The crowding statistics are based on services arriving into cities in the 3 hour morning peak and departing from cities in the 3 hour afternoon peak, etc., etc., etc. So, this is the statistics showing decline. 20% decline, for heaven's sake, is an awful lot of decline. So, why is HS2 being treated as if the opposite is the case? Train users or passenger usages has been going down. All right, so we go to the Daily Mail's version of the item, and we shall check what the Daily Mail is saying. Now, here are two items of railway transport today. The one about HS2 says HS2 bosses rake in 10 million pounds amid Prime Minister's alarm at spiraling cost. We'll come to that in a minute. The first one is stranded rail passengers are forced to get 200-mile taxis. Now, that is for the weary passengers on the 4:40 p.m. Avanti train to Edinburgh. It was far from funny. Around 3 hours into their journey on Monday, they received an email to say the service from Euston had been cancelled. The confused commuters were then ordered out of their carriages at Preston and told to wait for other trains. However, station staff delivered the news at 9:20 p.m. that there would be no more services that night. Incredibly, Avanti, which despite passenger opposition was granted a 9-year contract to continue running the West Coast Main Line last week, offered to ferry the travelers 200 miles north by taxi. Many only arrived in the Scottish capital after 3 a.m., 11 hours after they left Euston. The farce is likely to cost the company around £30,000 in fares and compensation for the estimated 250 on board. One of those was the comedian James Nockis, who told 10,000 followers on Twitter about his nightmare journey. He wrote, around 7:26 p.m., I received an email that my train had been cancelled. This was a surprise because I was still on a moving train. There had been no announcement on the moving train. About 10 minutes later, the train manager came on the speaker to say they heard from passengers that the train had been cancelled. The train was supposed to reach Edinburgh at 10:15 p.m. Mr. Nokis's insane odyssey actually took 11 hours. He arrived at around 3:40 a.m. During the taxi journey. An email from Avanti told him he would receive £70 compensation, the cost of his ticket. Avanti said it had no choice but to hail the service, halt the service at Preston, after another driver saw a track defect near Lockerbie in Dumfries and Galloway. Avanti said the closure of the West Coast Main Line had a significant impact on our services. We fully understand the frustrations of customers and we are extremely sorry. Now, this is typical British public service. It doesn't work, it's not fit for purpose. And the second one is about the HS2 bosses raking in 10 million a year. I mean, they are on a they are on a kind of lottery. Well, they're on a fun season at HS2. The reason why we say that it's corrupt and it's criminal is not because we want to call it corrupt or criminal. This is what has been going on. The main HS2 contracts that have been given to big business have been nothing to do with the technology, nothing to do with the actual expertise, nothing to do with any emergency whatsoever. It is to do with the perennial, endless number of opportunities found by criminals to fleece the public of any amount of money that they can get. And that is what this is a tip of the iceberg. This report about HS2 bosses raking in £10 million a year is a tip of the iceberg. So the actual importance given by the Times to the what is important in to the economy and in society is not about the economy or transport or whatever. It is to do with the corrupt criminality of the servile mental slave. She is desperate to become the kind of leader of the Conservative Party, but she will end with greater amount of tears than Boris Johnson ended. So let's go back to the HS2 on the Times, and it's Times page 6, and it says HS2 critic as Sunak's year on rail mistake. The heading is Rishi Sunak is being advised on HS2 by a long-standing critic of the project who has described the railway as the greatest infrastructure mistake in half a century. Remember, this is not anything compared to what we have been saying for the last 15 years, let's say, about HS2. This is the tip of the iceberg. We have been extensively elaborate in our world exclusive original diagnosis of HS2. So this is just part of the admission that they're making. Half a century. We say it's more than a century. The Prime Minister is understood to have hired Andrew Gilligan, for fuck's sake, this year, and the former journalist was an important figure behind the move to curtail HS2. Gilligan was the author of a highly critical report into HS2 published by the think tank Policy Exchange, which called for the cancellation of all sections of the railway where construction had not started. It warned that HS2 was allowed to continue, it would eat much of the government planned transport budget, sucking billions of pounds out of the service which most people use, need, and want. Amid a growing backlash against his plans to scrap the network, to scrap the northern leg of the railway, the Prime Minister is understood to have reassured critics that he is yet to take a final decision. He has also said he is open to alternatives, including delaying parts of the railway by 7 years to reduce short term costs. The Times understands Sunak has been warned that if he pushes ahead with the plan, then civil servants may force him to issue official directions to pursue the policy over concerns that it would not represent value for money to the taxpayer. Gilligan opposition to HS2 goes back to 2019. Only 2019? We have been opposing it from the beginning, from the very off. When he failed to persuade Boris Johnson to scrap the project while working as a special advisor at Downing Street. Last November, Gilligan wrote a paper calling for large parts of HS2 to be scrapped. Even at the official price, even before the spending crisis, and even before COVID 19, it was and is misdirection of resources, an unprecedented size. He wrote, cancellation is not merely expedient, it is right. HS2 is Britain's greatest infrastructure mistake in half a century. One source said that Sunak was still privately gung ho, arguing that scrapping the northern leg would free money for less expensive transport infrastructure such as road improvement schemes. His mind is made up, they said, but he knows the scale of opposition that he's facing, so has brought himself more time. Speaking to the Times Radio yesterday, William Hague of Richmond, the former Conservative leader, defended Sunak and said that HS2 was a national disgrace. Hague, a close ally of the Prime Minister, said it should have been cancelled a few years ago when it was clear that the whole thing was out of control, that the costs are out of control, they wouldn't be able to ever go to Leeds. I would have cancelled it there. I'll read that again because I've read one or two words wrong. Haig, a close ally of Rishi Sunak, said it would have been cancelled a few years ago when it was clear that the whole thing was out of control, that the costs are out of control. They wouldn't be able to ever go to Leeds. I would have cancelled it then. Now you've got this classic problem. If you are halfway through something and it's been terribly, hardly, badly managed, really a national disgrace as a project, do you say, okay, I'm stopping this? Or do you say, actually, now we are halfway through, we have to at least complete and make sense of the parts we can still do? Hague declined to say whether Sunak should scale back the line. That's just a genuine dilemma. I hope that whatever is decided, Sunak will say we are managing things totally differently in the future. So there are two more pieces, one on pages 34 to 39. So it's not two pages, it's several pages. Let's check what they're doing on this. So there are two pages. So the two pages spread on pages 34 and 35 spell out other disasters disastrous impact in terms of cost of HS2 and the lack of real certainty and lack of economic urgency for it. I'll go to the Times letter about HS2 in a few minutes. Because there is one letter in the Times which the Times is kind of highlighting about HS2. There is one letter, there are two letters. So the first one is by Andrew McNaughton, Technical Director of HS2, 2009 to 2017, and is now based in Beckenham in Kent. As the original designer of HS2, may I make a couple of points? The designs and costs up to 2017 were based on the actual course of HS1, adjusted for inflation. We factored in extras, the main ones being more tunnels and maximizing capacity, a railway for all, not an elite few. We published the evidence that higher speed made little difference to the alignment or engineering. What we did not foresee were the changes and subsequent over engineering, often to avoid contract risk and cost superinflation on a scheme deemed too big to fail. We also did not foresee the size of the white collar management, a very British disease. Sir David Higgins, letter September 25th, chairman of HS2 2014 to 2018, reminds us that the original Y scheme connected the great city regions along the backbone of England. Chopping it to a useless rump would be the worst of all worlds. But to continue, it must have a radical reset with a slim team that is prepared to control cost. That is the Professor Andrew McNaughton, Technical Director of HS2, 2009 to 2017, now writing from Beckenham in Kent. And this one is from the past president, Newcomen Society for the History of Engineering and Technology, London West 14. It says the Clifton Suspension Bridge, as shown in Morton Morland's cartoon, September 26, was not built until 5 years after Brunel's death in 1859. The reason? The massive overspend on the first phase, involving the construction of the masonry piers and abutment, all the funds which came from the private sector dried up because investors were unwilling to continue pouring money into a bottomless pit. Work ceased in 1843. 7 years after building began, the project was revived in 1860 by Sir John Hawkshaw and W.H. Barlow, who designed a new bridge. They raised most of the money from a private consortium within the engineering profession, anxious, as they said, to remove a slur from the engineering talent of the country. The bridge on which Sunak is standing looking into the financial abyss was opened in 1864 and is successfully carrying far more vehicles than it was ever intended for. It is to be hoped that HS2 will have as good an outcome. Well, this is a stupid fantasy. It's a stupid fantasy, absolutely stupid and not supported by anything. So the piece by Douglas Murray, the right-wing propagandist on the Scum on editorial page, features Suella Evila Cruella, and it praises her. It says Suella has said what world leaders needed to hear. West can't come with illegal. West can't cope with illegal immigration. Well, who can? The question is not about the West. The question is about the whole world. And this whole piece is another pack of lies. We shall be continuing on all these and update them in due course. This is ending at 1 hour 14 minutes and the time is 09:52 GMT.